Hey, everybody. It is 7 o'clock in the East. It is 4 o'clock in the West. Welcome to the strategy session. I am your air traffic controller for this evening, Reed Galen. Joining me, as always, Lincoln Project co-founder, author of two New York Times best-selling books, Everything Trump Touches Dies and Running with the Devil, and host of the Enemies List podcast, the one, the only Rick Wilson. Rick, welcome
Reed,
in your pink shirt.
I'm rocking the pink shirt and the porch. It's very garden and gun tonight.
I was going to say it's a very beautiful, looks like a very beautiful early spring afternoon in
It
Tallahassee.
is absolutely gorgeous here.
All right. As always, Joe Trippi, legendary Democratic strategist and host of that Trippi Show. Joe, welcome.
Great to be with you guys.
And last but certainly not least, legendary ad man, man about town, endurance athlete, uh,
Bon vivant,
bon
boulevardier.
vivant, peripatetic traveler, outside author. Sorry, I keep rolling on. Stuart Stevens, how are you, Stu?
Thanks for asking me to the party.
All right, guys. So it's been I don't know, a couple weeks. I was off last week, but since we've been gone, as Kelly Clarkson would say, it is the MAGA people, as I wrote in my piece for Resolute Square this week, have gone right beyond the event horizon of a black hole of their own making. We always knew that when Trump came down the escalator, something had changed. Obviously, with his election, things have changed. His presidency, furthermore, we lost Stu, but hopefully
We
Sam can
lost
get him
two.
back for us. But guys, I'll tell you this, Rick. I want to start with you. This week, or this last 10 days, this month, let's call it, um, the GOP, MAGA, America First, Trump, whatever you want to call it. Um, I made the biggest mistake that Stu was always warning us about, which was I was shocked. I was surprised. Your cat as well
The cat was
didn't
shocked.
the
He was
shot the
shocked and
imagination, right?
appalled.
Stuart warned us 2 years ago that our biggest mistake was a lack of imagination, and it feels like every time mental boundaries here, Rick, they do something else that just sort of shocks the conscience, shocks the soul.
Well, I mean, we have seen over and over again that they love touching the hot stove. They love licking the 9-volt battery.
Especially
They
if it's a
cannot
gas stove, Rick.
a gas stove. They cannot resist um, because they're caught in this really bizarre wedge between everything that motivates their base and everything that repulses the rest of the country. And that wedge has widened and widened the gap inside the Republican Party further and further with each passing month. And last week seemed like it was really doing a number. Frankly, I think it probably started during the indictment, where we saw the MAGA base go back to Trump, leave even their brief, mild flirtations with DeSantis and the rest. I mean, well, the rest weren't even a flirtation; they were sort of a vague kind of "Hi, how are you?" Um, but they left him quickly. They went back to Trump, and people got a preview. They said, "Oh God, not this shit again, not
Right.
this again."
And so, Stuart, let me ask you. I wrote down the states here, whether or not it's what we saw with the expulsion of two African American members of the
Yep.
legislature in Tennessee for protesting, six people being killed in a school. Ron DeSantis's never-ending, quest to piss off as many different people in his own home state as he can. In Kansas, as we talked about before we went on the air, a law that could be construed that kids have to have
Yep.
their genitals inspected prior to sporting events. In Missouri, the Republican legislature there, in retaliation against the Missouri Librarians Association, voted to defund state funding of libraries. In Idaho, they're going to tell you whether or not if you're pregnant, you can cross state lines. In Iowa, the attorney general ruled that women who are victims of rape can't get the morning after pill. Not to mention that this whacked out Trump judge in Texas outlawed
Right.
a pill that's been around for 20 years. Like, I mean,
Right.
that's and then Mississippi, your home state, which I didn't realize this was a 3-decade tradition. But Tate Reeves decided to make a big deal about the fact that he wanted April, both the beginning and the end of the Civil War, Confederate Heritage Month. So take me through what the hell is going on here.
Look, I mean, it's something you've said a lot that as soon as these extremists want, it just becomes more extreme until there's an intervening force.
Mm.
Um, I think what you call the flywheel, and that's what's happening here. The party is unleashed to go to its most extreme. There's no governing force that penalizes being crazy.
Right.
So it's like you're at a game and somebody runs out nude on the stadium. They just kind of let them run around all day. Then a bunch of other people join them. Nobody goes out there and tackles them and says, no, we're here for other purposes. But
Right.
that is why the party has collapsed as a governing party.
And Joe, so think about this. Last week, Janet Protasewicz was elected to the Wisconsin State Supreme Court. And the news media, not surprisingly, jumping to the easiest conclusion, said it was all about abortion, all about abortion, all about abortion. But this is a candidate. She won with 56% of the vote in Wisconsin, which means that a significant number, or a sizable number anyway, for electoral purposes, of Republicans and independents voted for her as well. And so,
Mm-hmm.
subsequent to that now, you have no less than Kellyanne Conway going on Fox News going, hey guys, I think we got a real problem with like the youth vote and maybe this abortion thing isn't going to work out for us.
Well, it's not. I mean, that look. I wrote about this, my last podcast was called MAGA
Right.
Night, because both pro-choice and pro-democracy were what the Wisconsin race was about. And yes, women and young people responded to that. And the real thing was that the Kelly, the MAGA crazy on the ballot in Wisconsin was crazy. I mean, he was
Yeah.
off the charts. But part of this again is that same contrast, an off the charts doom. I keep saying they're circling the doom drain, and it's going to get worse, because the only way to out, it's usually go harder to the right or go harder to the left. No, these people are going harder to the crazy, harder to the danger, to the
Right.
doom, to the anger,
Yep.
and the retribution. That's where Kelly was. It was not just pro-choice and pro-democracy, but again, the contrast between I think the last couple cycles have been them doing the crazy. It's now them doing the crazy so far that people are really recognizing the danger, and that contrast really benefited Prosewicz in Wisconsin, and I think is why, if you're on the pro democracy side, you don't have to overthink the message here. It's
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right.
and by
Don't
the way,
work too
Crazy
hard.
is bad.
yeah,
Right.
one more time, they're doing the work for us because of how far off the rails this party is going. By the way, they're now doing, 10, it was down there when they expelled those two guys, the two, and
Right.
let the 61-year-old white woman stay,
Right.
was all January 6th all over again,
Right.
except no one was killed. No one took a dump all over the floor of
Right.
that chamber. No one
They didn't
urinated.
even carry a Confederate flag,
Yeah, no,
which
they
would have
didn't.
been normal.
I mean,
They
can you really call it a protest?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like, okay, yeah, that was bad. That was horrible. But January 6th, tourists. I mean,
Right.
Right.
come on. It's like
But
becoming
just
it's obvious.
as an aside though, let me just say this, because there was video of some of these Republican members in Tennessee on the state floor lecturing these two guys, right?
Yep.
And I mean, the only thing either of them was missing was like a Boss Hog costume, or like Jackie Gleason from Smokey and the Bandit, right?
Uh,
Like, I mean,
I,
or maybe Foghorn Leghorn. Like, I mean, they
you
were
could
out
see
of central casting.
their body language, and you knew even without the audio, they used the words uppity at some point. I mean,
Right.
these people were so overtly racially profiling these guys, and sending a dog whistle out to the world that they're going to try to outdo the Florida legislature or outdo the Missouri legislature to be as overtly blunt about silencing dissent as they possibly can, and they weren't shy about it.
No.
And the fact that it was so unbelievably blatant in the face of the fact that the Tennessee legislature had a guy who was a convicted child molester sitting in the body for years, that there were people under federal investigation for for tax fraud. There are people in that body who do not live in their seats, including the Speaker of the Tennessee House.
Right,
And
and
you could
just
go
props to Judd Legum and
absolutely
his
tireless.
column, The Information, which if you haven't signed up for, absolutely do that.
Yep.
Go ahead, Rick. I'm sorry.
But
Yeah.
no, but this this entire sort of grotesque show they put on is part of all of them are racing for this weird finish line in their minds because they are afraid you're going to have a lot of young voices and young voters and young legislators making a different set of decisions because they understand that the core of the Republican Party right now is people that are in the early part or the early baby boomers, and they're going away. The actuarial tables are ticking by for all of us, and they know that there's going to be a large wave, even in Tennessee, even in Florida, of younger voters coming along. I mean, in the next 10 years, the composition of the electorate in Florida is going to become 8.5 years younger than it is right now,
Hmm.
just
So,
actuarially speaking.
Reed and I
so
were talking about this on the phone
go ahead,
earlier
Joe.
today, and this is the part I don't get, and I really like to get what you guys are thinking about this. What I don't understand is, I get why Trump is now surging even more to the lead of the MAGA crowd. I got that. What I don't get is why, in the face of all this, all the things that we just listed, that Reed just listed, that are going on across all these states, where they are, like I said, going into the, just circling the doom drain. Why is it that Trump, I get the MAGA part, but why is it that he's still competitive and actually ahead in polls against Biden right now? What's your take on that? Or what's that? What's that? Or is it when we get closer and they realize that's what the choice is, they'll make a
Yeah,
different choice?
that's what I think.
Stu, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's not really anything that most people are thinking about. It's sort of like, what are you going to have, next November the 2nd? What are you going to have for dinner? I don't know. But, I don't think it's a real choice yet. I think in the back of a lot of people's minds, there may be whether or not Biden is really going to be on the ballot, and come November 24th. To me, what is just the most astounding about it is the inability of anyone of statute in the Republican Party to stand up and say this is madness. Half of Americans who are 15 years and younger are non-white, and in 1980 there was 64% of the electorate when Reagan won the sweeping landslide was non-college educated voters. Now it's under 40%. Non-college educated white voters. Now it's under 40%. That's Trump's base. It's the fastest declining demographic in the country of any size.
Yep.
And they're standing there and just watching it as if it's kind of like they're running a company that's dying, but they're trying to milk the last, little bit of profit for the people who are in control now. And then, the whole thing's going to go under, but it won't bother them because,
But I mean, even when you know that, and I know this for a fact, that Ron DeSantis has been approached. It's been reported now in a couple different places. His major donors, and that's really all Ron DeSantis has, folks, is major donors. That's really the vast bulk of that pile he's sitting
Which he
on.
desperately needs as an aside to build crowds for him because nobody actually wants to come
I
see
want
him
to talk about
speak.
that in a minute because that blows my freaking mind. Um, but one of his most important donors called him last week and said, "Did you not pay attention to what happened with Dobbs? Because it killed us. And if you sign a 6-week abortion ban in Florida, it's going to kill us. Your pollster has to be telling you it's bad." And he's like, "I don't care. I got to outflank this I've got to win the social conservatives. That's all I care about." So, I mean, apparently the dog is not tired of the taste of the car's bumper quite yet, because they're going to do this, and a number of other states have as well. I think it's going to have a similar knock-on effect to what happened with Dobbs last year, where a couple weeks after people realized it, they changed their voting intention from either D to independent or I mean R to independent or R to D. And the fact that they're banning misoprostone, they're going for a 6-week abortion ban. And in Florida, apparently, it's not 6 weeks if you have two doctors sign off simultaneously that the pregnancy is going to put the child in danger. They've made it as difficult as possible. It's not winning and stepping back from something people found politically repulsive last year. It's doubling and tripling down over and over and over again.
But Joe, to just extend Rick's point a little bit, even Donald Trump, right,
Right.
who is as bad a person as there is in this whole deal, said don't touch Social Security and Medicare, and the Dobbs thing was a mistake. When he's the voice of reason, you got big freaking problems.
Yeah, particularly when DeSantis and everybody else is trying to figure out how to get even meaner than him. So
Right.
it actually is all kind of like all the inertia is in the wrong direction. And like you said, when Trump is more reasonable than DeSantis and the rest of
And
them,
this is all relative, so don't send
yeah, yeah,
emails. It's relative.
yeah.
Right.
Don't say when Trump's don't please. But my point is that they are going deeper and deeper down the dark rabbit hole, and and it's amazing to me. Not amazing. We all predicted that this is exactly what would happen. That there's no way that any of them will outmaneuver around Trump. But at the same time, I don't see, and maybe that's why Trump isn't getting undertowed down right now with this because of what he's done with Medicare and Social Security. But I just don't think that'll play out well.
I mean, the degree to which Trump's brazenness about that shocked people, it should not have. People have to realize and remember, we're going to remind folks of this over and over again between now and next year. Donald Trump is now not surrounded by Brad Parscale and Corey Lewandowski,
Mhm.
guys you wouldn't trust to empty out the grease trap at a Waffle
Kelly
House,
and
okay?
Conway.
He right. He now has people like Susie Wiles and Chris LaCivita. They are smart people. They are experienced campaign people. They are not trivial ne'er-do-well weirdos who wandered into the right bar at the right moment. They're people you hire if you want to go win. And Trump is steering, as crazy as it seems, he's picking a few pieces of very careful strategic messaging windows, Social Security being one of them, where he knows Biden will take his head off in the general election. Because there are so many people like Rick Scott and the rest who want to eliminate Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. And he's taking good advice from smart people. Don't underestimate it, because thinking that he's dumb, he is dumb in many ways, but he's also crafty as shit. So
So,
be advised.
so
But
Stuart, remember, just real quick, I want to ask one thing about Trump vis-a-vis the party. So on election night 2020, right? We know, talking to people we know on the Republican side and people we know on the Democratic side, everybody on the Democratic campaign offices was convinced that Democrats were going to roll up a whole bunch of U.S. Senate seats, and vice versa, that it was a tomb at the National Republican Senatorial Committee,
Yep.
right? But it didn't really work out that way, right? Now the Republicans, blew Georgia twice, but the thing was that the guys that got elected, mostly guys, and Susan Collins, like, they were the last of the normies, so to speak.
Yeah.
Now we fast forward to
right.
2022. Trump gets his people, and the ones that certainly we needed to lose and we're going to lose in competitive races did so. But now those same people in places like Pennsylvania or
Mhm.
Arizona are going to
Right.
be the nominee, are going to at least run for the Republican primary nomination. So give us your sense of, like, did Trump open, like, Pandora's box and it's gotten away from him? What's your sense of that?
Look, I think, my own pet theory, now it's unburdened by evidence, but other than that, of what happened in 20 was that Biden successfully made it a referendum on decency. So you could look at Susan Collins and say, is she a decent person?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, she is. She's not, like you're saying, she's not She's not Carrie Lake. She's not
Right.
insane. Um, this is what they want. I mean, they want Mastriano. They want Lake. And, I think that they still think that they can win with this. Um,
That's what I think is going to happen.
So then,
If people nominate
Joe, to continue that, then does Trump have the special place because he's the head of the movement? Therefore,
Enough.
he has
well,
more leeway to
That's
say and
right.
do things.
he's the head of the cult, and yeah, I mean
Yeah.
the party is a cult
the
now,
head
but
of the party.
that's why they're going to nominate. The same reason that 2022 didn't work out the way they thought, they're going to nominate the same kind of crazy, um, extreme fascist candidates with
It's
the
funny.
with the lead fascists, be it Trump or DeSantis or whoever. It'll be DeSantis, starting his own, armed force in Florida, to impose stuff. I mean, he is being completely out there as a fascist, and maybe they'll try to outdo each other, but the same thing is going to happen in these House races and in these Senate races and in the
Mhm.
governor's races. They're going. It's the same thing that we pointed out in 2022, where if you nominate this extreme radical fascist, um, sort of revenge and anger group of candidates like the Kerry Lakes and others, they're going to. I think this time it's going to be more pronounced at how the country reacts to it. And
So,
So
so Rick, let me ask you this then: if we're sitting here and we're positing that the 11 or 12 insane things that the Republican Party all did this week, right,
mhm.
are antithetical or repellent to moderate, quote unquote, moderate Republicans, what the Lincoln Project would call ban in line Republicans, right? People who don't like what the party is, or independents, right? What is the electoral strategy then for a Donald Trump? Yes, you're right. Side, Lasavita is a knife fighter, but I mean they read polls as well as we do. Like, where's their path here?
Why? Yeah. Look, Trump is going to rely on what I call the son of Rove 2004 strategy. He's going to try to get the base ratcheted as high as he possibly can. He's going to pick out a few issues that are his culture war issues, and he's going to ratchet them as far and as tight as he can. The primary one will be immigration, secondary crime. He's already road testing all this shit. And he's going to try to portray the country as being caught in a financial apocalypse, and he's betting on, in a large degree, a recession or a difficult year at the end of this year, beginning of next, as that whole predicate, so we can have the imaginary gauzy pass of the economy was great with me, never mind the 500,000 people who died, um, and the streets are running with blood, and don't you want security and safety? Um, to look back on the candidate selection thing, I was talking to our friend Ruben Galeo today out in Arizona. Now he's running right now. The announced Republican is a sheriff from Pinal County who apparently wears body armor at every single event. Like wears body armor 24 hours a day. Um, and this guy is like, well, I'm a real conservative, unlike people like Carrie Lake and Blake Masters.
Right.
Oh, okay then.
Yeah, in 2004, speak of that, I was part of that. And what we discovered in focus groups was that there was nothing we could tell people who weren't going to vote for Bush to vote for Bush.
Right.
There were no persuadable voters.
That's right.
And the only hope was to take a precinct, and we called them fortress precincts, that you knew you were going to get 60% in, and try to get it to 66, 65.
Yep.
That was it. I mean, you would tell people, like, George Bush cut federal taxes, income taxes for a family of four that makes under $40,000. And you'd be talking to someone and they go, that's not true. And you go, what? You don't pay taxes now. It is true. And they go, no, but I pay a lot of other taxes. There was just nothing you could say.
Right.
Um,
so
and it worked barely. It barely worked.
I
You know,
that's my guess on where they're headed strategically, because look, you're not going to run as a um, you're not going to run as a a reform candidate against the corrupt Biden administration. That may get the Bannon and the Fox audience jacked up, but nobody believes it compared to Trump. Um, and you may run as the economic savior, but again, it's a lift. It's a big sell when the unemployment rate is at its lowest in 60 years. So, you know, I think there's a lot to it, and I think there's a lot of I think there's a lot to the base plus strategy that Trump will excel at, but it is a risky, narrow path in a lot of ways. I think he's more beatable than he was in 20, even though he's in some ways more formidable organizationally than he was in 20.
Well,
Um,
and let me just say this
yeah.
because I want to come back to your governor, your neighbor Rick, in a second. But there was an NPR survey I heard, I think, a couple of weeks ago that said in a survey, Trump was supported by 75% of Republicans.
Mhm.
That's a bad number. That is a bad number for the leader of the party, for the former president of the party. That means there are 25% of Republicans, and to your point, when it's a binary
We'll
choice, maybe
take
that
them. Come visit
right.
us.
But like that's not a
Well,
great place to be if you're
No.
supposed to be getting reelected. And I think it just shows that that the descent into madness expands the opportunity for the pro
well,
democracy forces to win.
Right.
but that's where I think the what's happening with young voters in Tennessee and other things that have been going on, and Wisconsin clearly show that
Mhm.
that the reason one of the reasons he isn't as formidable as he was in past elections because the youth vote is energized, and it's energized on the gun violence, on what they're doing to take
Dobbs.
women's Dobbs women's rights, etc. That base that was hard to get to vote for Biden. I mean, they weren't the most excited people for Joe Biden. They're probably not the most excited people for Joe Biden today.
Right.
However, and probably are among those who say, "Oh, I wish Joe Biden doesn't run." Absolutely. However, when they are faced with Joe Biden versus Trump, Mastriano, I mean the
Hmm.
Kerry Lakes,
Right.
they are they are coming out and they're yes, it may be an anti-vote, it may be a vote against Trump, against this MAGA craziness, but I think that makes it very, very tough. I mean, the interesting thing, like you look at Pennsylvania, Mastriano and Trump on the ticket, kind of doubling down on each other, or who's running away from who? Is it Mastriano running away from Trump, or Trump trying to run away from Mastriano? Not going to happen. This is
Yeah,
this
you
is going
know,
to. I think both of them are going to drive a turnout that will work against them.
I was looking at in light of what's happening in Tennessee, these gun numbers, and saw something that surprised me, and I thought it was very interesting. 68% of the public approved of the gun bill that Biden signed last time. But the favorable approval was 35%. And the very unfavorable, the very favorable was 35%. The very unfavorable was only 11%, which tells me that it's numbers to back up just what you're saying. So the intensity of this has shifted. Because for us, when like we were coming up, the intensity on the gun issue was all with the NRA. It was
Yeah.
much higher than the anti. It was just people weren't, they would say theoretically, but what people were basing their vote on it when you went out and did a regression analysis, and that
It
has
was
shifted.
only it was well for a very long time. It was only Republicans who would base their vote.
Yeah,
I mean, Democrats are in love with 50 different issues as a rule.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
And
see the difference on this one I think is again, if I can serve as an analog for a moderate Republican, right? I got two little girls, right?
Mhm.
I send them to school every day. This is a salient issue for me.
Sure.
My girls know what an active shooter drill is, right? They hear the news. This is a real live thing for them. And it's a real live thing for my family and millions of other families that I think sort of cuts against the sort of normal, do you believe in the Second Amendment or don't?
Well,
Because now it's our kids' lives.
But Reed, you know what's amazing about this? Because I've been doing some research on 98% of the schools in this country are doing mass shooting drills, right? And
Right.
you know what the drill is? Teaching. I'm talking fourth, fifth, third graders how to barricade the door to their classroom, how to make sure they have something sharp in their hands so they can defend themselves against an AR-15, some crazy person with an AR-15. And
Well, I
my
mean
yeah,
that's the 1950s equivalent, which you guys might have taken part in, of duck and cover drills when a
yeah, but,
thermonuclear bomb's going on outside, right?
but
Like
there's a
you got about
well,
as good
State
a
of
chance as
Florida.
you know
surviving.
what
Was it
the
going to work?
difference is? I'll tell you what the difference is. We were diving under those desks in those nuclear raid drills, but we never saw one.
Right.
Right? There's never a bomb never dropped anywhere. These kids are growing up traumatized by these drills, and at the same time, seeing one once a week, once every. I mean, I've been reading about children who actually go through one of these drills, and they think it was actually real, that it really happened, and that's the trauma that doing nothing I think just too many millions of Americans now who have children that they know have gone through this and think we need to do something and think throwing two African Americans out off the floor
Yeah.
because of
Especially
And then,
especially
crazy.
too as clearly politically talented as
Yeah,
these guys.
yeah, and
Right.
then you
But
have
remember, but
studies. You
remember
have
that they're throwing them off the floor. I suspect they've been looking because I did some reading. These guys have been like they were getting to rock star status before this happened. I suspect Sexton and the Republicans would have picked any. You're not wearing the right tie. You're doing,
yeah,
you didn't say sir or madam president or whatever. I
yeah,
but it is also interesting to me that that if you have Democratic candidates like that coming up in the system, that's really promising. Um, if you don't have a farm team with guys like that, you're going to be skunked because they have to bring in better quality candidates across the board because their campaigns are still not up to par. Honest answer, tough love. It's how it is. But look, it's hard to make any campaign come up to par if you're not a natural at it. And there was been a question about this from our friend Brian Torrey. He asked about Ron DeSantis paying for crowds. And Reed and I had such a laugh about this the other day because
Yeah.
I mean,
So look, I mean, I don't know how much of my 20s I spent building crowds for various people, but it was a significant amount. Um, and as you guys know, having come off the plane as many times as you all did, if your candidate saw a half empty room, there was hell to pay, right?
woo.
And if you hadn't created the room such that a half empty room still looked full for the people that mattered, you were in a lot of trouble. And, it was like, do you have enough people? Well, I got 25,000 people confirmed to come. How many people think you're going to show? 12,000? All right. How much more money do you need to spend on get out,
Right.
turnout calls and all this other stuff? Um, and so the idea here is that, like, let's be clear, he's not very compelling. He's not,
yeah,
well,
you
also,
look at one of these guys, Justin, and forgive me for not knowing which one it was. He's at a church in Memphis. This guy's bringing down the freaking house,
Right.
right? Like this guy, he's a young guy, and he is incredible, right? He was doing this off the cuff. And let me just say this: if you've never gone to a major holiday in an African American church,
Oh.
you should do it. And if you can't find God there, you'll never find him anywhere. I will just say that,
yeah.
right? But he's not a very compelling guy. He's not interesting. Who wants to go to a book signing event where you can't take pictures or whatever? Like, and then you're going to spend super PAC dollars on it. I mean, it's just. I mean, if I were a seven-figure donor, I'd be ripshit.
The real giveaway was that one of his own staff members in the Puck article said, "We can't let him have a Jeb Bush please clap moment in a small room full of people." And if you said that at that point, if you've uttered those words out loud, you've already had your please clap moment. The guy's terrible. He's like watching a can of meatloaf just sit on a table. It's just boring. He's just not
Or maybe a
funny.
bowl of meatballs.
Right. He's not, maybe a meatballs. Yeah. He's not funny. He's not engaging. And you can't buy that with a hot crowd. And by the way, Reed will tell you this. Stu can tell you that we have all been here where you want the big crowd so you can film the candidate giving a rocking stem winder speech, get all the great crowd shots, fly the
I
camera on
really,
wires over the
Look, I
audience.
mean,
They're all
Stuart,
I
losing their
really
minds.
don't, I really
I'm sure
don't know.
Stuart was there, in Austin in 1999 when we did that put up deal in Austin, right, where we had every last member of the governor's staff and the campaign staff and everything else
There's
Right,
looking
actually
for
including
a
all
spot.
I,
down to
I,
third cousins.
I
Right.
got to be honest.
There's a funny story about that. Unbeknownst to us, I was in a parking lot. We shot it at night. It was totally staged. But unbeknownst to us, it was next to a gay bar that one of his daughters was holding a fundraiser at for some charity. And everybody, like from the gay bar, kind of came out after we were filming and came on stage. And Bush was great with this. I mean, it was hysterically funny.
I,
And it was just such the difference of,
Well,
I got
that's
to
also
tell you,
somebody who's a good political athlete. Go ahead, Joe. I'm sorry.
I can't identify with any of this because in the Dean campaign, we had no problems with crowds. We had problems with microphones and other things, but we never had a problem with crowds.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, I mean, this is, I think, sort of the classic problem. And, to zoom out of DeSantis for a second but to talk about the whole crowd or to talk about the whole field, such as it is. Nikki Haley's campaign put out this memo this week, sort of this strategic update memo, in which they actively complain that Donald Trump is getting too much attention, right? That they can't break through in the media narrative because he gets too much attention, which spurred a Politico article today, which I think we all had a hearty laugh about, where all these, still Republican, consultants are being like, it's 2015 all over again. Well, no
I
shit.
wrote the same fucking article for Resolute Square last week and said,
No, Rick, we wrote that. We wrote
yeah,
that at the beginning of March.
correct. Oh my God. No,
I
I
know.
mean, the time loop never fucking ends. It never stops. You know why? You know why the time loop never ends? They refuse to learn their lesson. They refuse to say the problem isn't just Trump, it's us. We're living in a fantasy bubble. We're pretending nothing can go wrong. Everything's gone wrong. Everything goes more wrong every day. That's what blows me away. It's just like this smugness about him. I'm just like I'm
there's
so
also, Rick, it really strikes me. There's no policy here.
Right.
no.
There's nothing that you say, okay, what do I get? What do I get? I get like, a bathroom. Why am I voting for these people? So that I don't have to worry that I'm going to catch this contagious
They're gonna
disease
attack the woke mind
of
virus.
yeah,
Yeah.
that I'm going to go to Disney and I'm going to get some contagious disease of homosexuality. Um, what what is it? There's no. And so once we call big state governors the laboratory of ideas, that the Republican Party would say, what are the ideas here?
Now it's a
There's no.
petri dish of crazy conspiracy
Yeah,
bullshit.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's no vision here. There's no sense of,
Yeah.
you have DeSantis who goes out and says, well, I agree with Putin. It's a territorial dispute. When you have genocide occurring, there's just nothing. There's nothing there.
No.
There's
But
no
remember,
substance
the
to it.
other
There's
part of
just
it is
emotion, this anger, this fear.
they've gone off the cliff. They keep falling, but they're not changing their direction because they're so stuck in this base only
Now
idea.
they're at a fight
Oh,
with Bud. They're in a
Right,
fight with
right.
Budweiser.
And with Jack Daniels, um,
Oh, I didn't know about Jack
yeah, no,
Daniels.
Well,
All right.
they've gone woke.
as somebody said, Kat Abu from Media Matters, who,
Yeah,
if
yeah,
you don't follow her on Twitter, she does terrific work on Fox, said,
Yeah, really great.
"When's the
tremendous.
last time a major American corporation did something that wasn't in its own economic best interest?"
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, you're going to read the market. I mean, look, people
everybody's
are going to
woke
stand
now.
in line
Right.
watching Disney on their iPhone in their Nikes, can't wait to get a Bud after they vote. I mean, that's just, you don't want to bet against these people. And that's what they've
Yeah,
done.
and
And wait
but
till they
I mean,
find out that the whole thing is owned by Belgians.
No, but you also got you've
crafty
got
Belgians with their delicious waffles,
and
excellent cheese, and
well, but,
dark beers.
but we see this with Fox. I mean, it's
Right.
the same thing. Fox, the, you know, they try to move away or to DeSantis or to whoever, And then they realize, no, we got to go. They're chasing their audience, and it's the same thing with the whole party that like they all created this, and the audience wants darker, meaner, vengeful fascism. That's what they want, and so not only does the party have to keep feeding it, but so does the outrage machine have to keep feeding it. And I think
Mm-hmm.
the more they feed it, the darker it gets, the more Americans realize, wait, this isn't just crazy, it's dangerous. And that's, I think, that, what
Yeah, it's also
we forwarded
exhausting.
in 2024.
Well, I mean,
Right. But the
I
exhausting
heard
stew goes to the normal piece too, which is people just they
Yeah,
want
you
to go
don't
about
want
their
to.
lives.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I heard from
you don't want to wake up and have to think about what crazy things your president did, or what the
But that,
benefit of living in civil society is not have to think about government,
but
not
that's
worry
I
what
about
you
heard
what
like
from
mood they're in.
about Tom Nichols saying that hey, make them smoke the whole pack.
oh
Right.
yeah,
Like
every day,
Absolutely.
yeah,
every day make the force people to see what the hell Trump and Fox and these crazies are doing.
just
All
before we
right.
went on the air,
Yeah, go ahead, Rick.
I talked to a DeSantis ally who um who said to me, who said, I'm about to leave my position. Um, I'm tired. I'm just beat down. I don't want to get up every morning. He goes, and over the weekend, he's not just saying, not only we're going to not let Disney off the hook, we're going to build toll roads and raise their individual hotel
Yeah.
taxes. And I'm going to we're going to subpoena all of the Disney executives, and we're going to break them. And he said, that's all that's ahead of me now for years. For
Yeah,
years.
when it's not even May of the year before, and you're in a presidential campaign and you're tired, dude, you
Yeah.
have
Right.
no idea. You
Yeah,
have no.
listen, everybody gets tired in presidential campaigns, and
Well,
we
the only good news for
No.
him is that having been part of the first wave, he probably would have gotten fired anyway. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, well,
yeah.
That's always
I
the
don't want to
case.
say too much about who it was, but a person who he like, I haven't talked to this person in a long time, calls me out of the blue and just says, this is just bullshit. It's not what I signed up for. This is just, he
There's
goes,
no
this will go
joy in
on
it.
and on and
No.
on and on. It'll be down to the point where they're like
Well,
making Disney try to buy, American made Disney swag or whatever the fuck it'll be.
And yeah, and
well,
as Stuart said, I mean, I'm lucky enough to have worked for several people who I really believed in, and some of those were the hardest days I can remember. To
Sure.
do it for somebody you don't really believe in is a brutal existence.
I,
Agonizing.
I tell everybody who asks about a presidential campaign about how exhausting, that one, everybody should do one. Every American should get involved and work for somebody they believe in for president of the United States. When you do that, at the end of it, win or lose, you'll say that was the greatest experience of my life that I've ever had. The very next sentence out of your mouth,
I'll never fucking do it again.
please God, don't let me do that again. Exactly.
Right.
And you got
Which
and you're talking to four guys
who
who
can't get it right? Yeah.
Who
can't
can't
stop.
stop.
Can't stop.
All right, guys. Before we go, let's get some last thoughts here. So, Stuart, lead us off. What are you seeing out there?
Look, I think there has been this reluctance to embrace the degree of which our politics is played in the key of race. And I think we're seeing this right
Right.
now. When we talk about working class voters supporting Trump, it's white working class voters. He not overwhelmingly, he lost working class voters, if you define those as under 50,000. You say, if you look at Romney won voters under 30 if they were white. We look at the wrong denominator here.
Yep.
And so you have something like in the state of Mississippi, Tate Reeves, who's kind of a nothing guy, I've known him forever, continuing to do this Mississippi Heritage Week. Just it has to stop, but they won't stop until they're forced to.
That's
And
right.
it just becomes, when you have a smaller and smaller group, which they have, you have to just talk louder and louder to reach them. It's exactly what Joe was saying.
Yep.
And it's the great failure of the Republican Party. Goldwater got 7% of the black vote. Trump got 8%. I did the math on this. It's 1,780 years that they'll be back to what Eisenhower got, which was 42%.
I'm not waiting around for that.
Yeah.
So, all right.
But
Well,
Peter
Rick, how
Thiel will
about you?
be here.
Right.
Peter
Yeah.
Thiel will be
I
here.
Yes.
am watching.
They'll all be immortal in their moon bases. So,
Yes,
Rick, go ahead.
I am watching right now very closely what I think will be the end game on a lot of the hearings and the show trials that are happening in the House. None of them are working. They're not producing results.
Yeah.
They're not even getting on the news that much.
Right.
And I think McCarthy is realizing just how disastrous they've been. He's got a
Hmm.
big debt fight coming up. He needs all hands on deck for the real thing, not for this bullshit Jim Jordan fantasy world. Um, I, and I think there's going to be a big fight over whether those continue in the next probably 4 to 6 weeks.
All right. Joe, how about you?
I'm watching the youth vote. I mean, I got to tell you, the thing that I'm more and more convinced of is Gen Z, the Victor Shees, the people out there in this younger
Yeah.
generation, what we saw in Tennessee. They're going to save our democracy, and they they are not going to listen to a party that says we can do nothing, which is what the current MAGA
Right.
crowd is even worse than that. And so
Hmm.
you look at Wisconsin, you look at the turnout and the energy of young voters. I think that is going to be, and that's the interesting thing here, because as you guys have all pointed out, so far the MAGA crowd has decided to double down on telling them to fuck off
Yeah.
instead of getting, wait a minute, this could be a big problem for years and decades to come. And the one thing I'd say is, I came up in the late 70s, early 80s in politics, where Reagan was able to attract, I mean, really attract, and sort of the hard left drove away younger voters, and Reagan benefited from that. And what we got was 12 years in the wilderness. I'm talking as a Democrat now, when we lost that generation. Because a lot of times, the way you vote early in life is
Yep.
how you tend to be. The
Sure.
Republicans Party right now, the MAGA controlled party, is really, I think, at a momentous moment where they're going to lose Gen Z and some of their older brothers and sisters for a long, long time. And then when you see their older base, I mean, when you see what the demographics are, this, I think, could be the turning point in 2024. They're motivated, they're organizing, they're working, and they're going to make a difference.
Don't take anything for
Well,
granted, people.
right.
No,
Well, that's true. But let me. So I want to still talk about America's youth, but I want to talk about kids. Again, I have school age kids, which is, if you look at so much of the insanity of the last week, it's aimed right at our children, at America's children. And it's a really, for the party that's supposed to be family values, these things
yeah,
are not at all the values that I would instill in my children, the things that I would allow to happen to my children if I could avoid it. In 11 states, they're trying to roll back child labor laws. I
Right.
just don't understand. Like, do we need 11-year-olds working the drill press? Like,
Well, if
if
you're
we
going to
do,
force people to have kids, you might as well put them to work.
right. And I think that that's something
Little
else
Johnny
too, that
needs to go down and hammer that coal face.
right. Yeah. I mean, yes, exactly. Tell little Jackie that he's got to, dismember a pig at the slaughterhouse. I mean, it's just, I don't understand, Joe, to your point, and Stu, to your point about the different people that they seem hell bent on ostracizing,
Yeah.
upsetting, targeting, right? Kids are
yeah,
right in the middle of it. I mean, when you're telling
Hmm.
Missourians, right, oh, we're gonna defund public libraries, like, who do you think that hurts? Do you think it hurts rich kids in the suburbs of Kansas City or St. Louis? No, it hurts African American kids and
Right.
kids in rural Missouri, which most of the state is. And so I'm just, and all this school voucher stuff that's just going crazy because Republicans, I really do believe they hate education generally. And so they want our kids ignorant, scared, hungry because they won't vote for school lunches or school breakfasts. I just don't understand. And I'll tell you, like, again, as a parent of school age children, Like, I'll do all I can to make sure these people never get to decide how other people's kids.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
all right. Well, listen, guys, I want to thank you for joining me. I want to thank everybody for listening. Please tune into the Lincoln Project podcast, 3 episodes this week. Tune into the Enemies List podcast. Tune into That Trippy Show.
2 episodes this
Tune
week.
into Stuart Stevens. He is on television 14 times a day. Watch it all, absorb it all. Send us your questions. Thanks, everybody. We'll see
And
you
the
next
Trippy
week.
podcast, the Trippy Show.
That Trippy Show.
Yeah.
Yes, That
Thank you.
Trippy Show. And we'll
Stuart,
see
you're the
everybody
owner
next
of that
week.
podcast, my friend. I think it's time.
I'm going to be the
Stuart.
last American.
You are, yes.
Not to have
There
one.
are 329 million podcasts, and Stuart doesn't have one.
Yep.
So, all right, everybody,
I just
take
wanna
care.
work
We'll
Thanks,
see you
on it.
next
everybody.
time.
Good night.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Take care.